Absolute pleasure to join the National Archives this evening to celebrate the 800th anniversary of the sealing of Magna Carta. Magna Carta has left a profound legacy for law and culture around the world. To commemorate Magna Carta and its powerful ideas, like trial by jury and due process of law embodied in its text, we have assembled an impressive group of scholars to discuss Magna Carta's influence on American constitutionalism. Tonight, we will be joined by Jennifer Paxton, a medieval specialist from Catholic University of America, Robert Polito, author of In the Shadow of the Great Charter, who I heard gave a wonderful lecture this afternoon, and Bruce O'Brien, a Magna Carta expert from the University of Mary Washington. Tonight's program will be live tweeted on the Consource Twitter page, live streamed on the National Archives YouTube page, and I'm told that C-SPAN is also here with us this evening. I hope folks joining us at home and around the world will tune in online and on social media. And with that, I now have the great privilege of welcoming to the stage our expert panelists, as well as our distinguished moderator, Judge Royce Lamberth, Senior United States District Judge for the District of Columbia. Please join me in welcoming them. With that, I'm going to hand the reins over to our very capable, distinguished moderator, Judge Lamberth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here at the Archives. As you know, it was 800 years ago today that a group of English barons forced King John to sign a charter known as Magna Carta with the idea that the king's capacity to kill or imprison should not be exercised at his whim, but that he should have explicit constraints, that is, that he would be subject to law, and that neither force nor detention would be used against a free man except in accordance with the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. Those are the words from that 1215 version of the Magna Carta. You'll hear a lot tonight about the impact Magna Carta has had in this country, in both state constitutions and, of course, in the United States Constitution. Since England never adopted a constitution, in some ways the influence of Magna Carta is even greater in this country. Certainly the notions of due process of law and the right to jury trials have developed directly from Magna Carta, as well as separation of powers principles and judicial decision-making on what law is. Some of this is really fascinating historically, I hope you find tonight. For example, when the barons demanded a jury of their peers in Magna Carta, they certainly were not envisioning a jury of commoners. Their peers were clearly other barons. So some of their notions would be a surprise to them if they were here 800 years later and know how we interpret a jury of your peers to include mere commoners. But Magna Carta has become a rallying cry for centuries now regarding what the law of the land requires. And as we debate today current topics like whether the president can legally authorize drone strikes to kill American citizens, we hear citations to Magna Carta even today in legal debates about the power of our president. As many of you know, there was a great ceremony today at Runnymede to celebrate this 800th anniversary. Queen Elizabeth was there, along with the archivist David Ferriero, who is there instead of here, I'm sorry to say. But not sorry for him. I'm sure he had a great time. And many of my colleagues, the president of the American Bar Association, many of my other colleagues from the American Bar Association were there as well. I have to tell you one story about Runnymede, because when I was a student in law school, my last summer before I graduated from law school, I spent in Europe, traveling through Europe, and I decided when I was in England that I would go to Runnymede to see where the Magna Carta had been signed, the original version in 1215. The American Bar Association actually put up the memorial that is there. It was only put up in 1957, so the actual memorial with the plaque was erected in 1957. I hate to admit, but I was there in 1966 while I was still in law school. There was no pathway just in the middle of this field out at Runnymede, so I had hitchhiked up there. I had a Europass for traveling in Europe, but it wasn't good in England, so I had to hitchhike during the time I was in England, and I hitchhiked out to Runnymede, and I rode various rides to get up there, and I had my suitcase with me because I was going to Stratford-on-Avon to see Shakespeare's production and to go to the Globe Theater after I left Runnymede. So I traipsed out there in the middle of this field and saw Runnymede and was somewhat dumbfounded there wasn't more of a production to this whole scene, and it was just in the middle of a field, this small memorial, and I trekked back, and as I'm getting back to go back to the highway, I start sliding down this hill. It was pouring down buckets of rain, sort of like when you came in tonight, only buckets of rain, and I slid down this hill. My suitcase came loose and slid down behind me and then on top of me. So I was really one muddy mess by the time I got to the highway. No one would stop and pick up this muddy mess. Eventually a lorry stopped, and I was able to get in this lorry and get my way back to Stratford-on-Avon. So I have a very vivid memory of Runnymede. So I'm really delighted to be able to participate in this program tonight. The New York Times headline yesterday read, "Magna Carta still posing a challenge at 800. In typical New York Times fashion, there's also an opinion piece yesterday entitled "Stop Revering Magna Carta" by a law professor from the University of Chicago, naturally. He decries some of the myths that have developed about Magna Carta. We will deal with some of those myths during our program tonight, but the National Archives is a very special place to have a discussion about Magna Carta because, as you just heard, the 1297 version of Magna Carta is on display here. I was in this very room the night that David Rubenstein was honored by the National Archives for obtaining, through an auction in New York, the only copy we have in America of the Magna Carta, and for presenting it to the archives so it could be on display. And the archivist, David Ferriero, introduced me to Mr. Rubenstein that night, and it was one of my great thrills in life to meet one of our real American heroes who's really doing something with the $1 billion he made to improve our life of all of us in this country, and certainly preserving the Magna Carta as one of our charters of freedom is something great he's done for this country, I think. So I think I want to stop talking myself and get to our illustrious panel, and I will start as we do chronologically with asking Bruce and Jenny if they will give us, we'll start with Bruce, sort of a historical overview